in the newsroom. He was a genius, but what sort of genius? Apple founder Steve Jobs passing away at 56 after a long battle with cancer. He changed everything from the simple computer mouse to more. Movie animation, the way we listen to music, talk on the phone, even read books and newspapers. His products, and let's not forget we're talking about inanimate objects here, stirring passionate devotion. His passing, genuine mourning. So what kind of genius was Steve Jobs? A technical genius? A marketing genius? Some even claim a dark genius whose closed system aspires to shut out anything that doesn't have the Apple seal of approval. Today in the France 24 debate, we establish the Book of Jobs and the lasting legacy of Apple's founder. With us from New York City, Jeff Jarvis, author of Public Parts. Thanks for being with us here in our studios in Paris. Aude Baron, of the nouvelobs.com website, this one of France's leading news weekly magazine's website. And also with us, Philippe Ingrand, co-founder of La Quadrature du Net. What does that mean?
That's a citizen group that is defending internet freedoms and the digital environment of freedom, let's say.
And the author as well, I should add, of the upcoming book, Sharing Culture and Economy in the Internet Age. France 24 digital media editor Eric Olander, welcome as always. And from Santa Barbara, California, Dean Hovey, CEO of DigitFit. Thanks for being with us. You were there at the outset when the first mouse was designed. We'll be talking about that in a moment. And we want to thank our viewers also for weighing in on the conversation on the France 24 Debate Facebook page and on Twitter, where our handle is @FrancoisF24. He stepped down at the end of August after already taking a first medical leave from the company he co-founded. Today, though, it's more than just the tech world that's in mourning.
For me, it's sort of like comparable to the day that Princess Diana died, because I guess Steve Jobs was kind of one of my heroes. He was a big inspiration for me.
The world has lost one of the most inventive, creative, entrepreneurial geniuses of our time. I mean, I think we can all remember, I certainly remember the first time I used an Apple computer, the first time I used an iPad.
He was a man of great perspective. He had a future, he had a vision for Apple, and he really put Apple on the map.
My favorite expression of his was, "It's better to be a pirate than to join the Navy." He was not a follower, he was a doer.
It's like Einstein's death. The iPhone is as important today in people's lives as a light bulb was in the past.
As important as the light bulb. Eric Olander, we've gotten comments, as you saw there, we've gotten comments from all over the world. Walter on Facebook says Apple may never taste the same again. He fought a good fight. Really, reactions from everywhere.
The reactions have been coming in from all over the place, and I think the initial reaction has been largely emotional and very sympathetic. And of course, there's a lot of divided opinion. There's the capitalist-communist divide in the world, and there's socialist and capitalist divide, and of course, there's the Apple and the PC divide. But today, a lot of the commentary on the social networks was in support and very sympathetic. Let's take a look at some of the pictures that we found earlier today over on the iPad. The iPad, of course, is one of Steve Jobs' inventions. Here on TwitPic, people outside the San Francisco Apple store saying, "Thank you, Steve." Also, we're seeing pictures coming from here in New York at the Apple Store, Post-it notes acknowledging also their remorse for the fact that Steve Jobs is no longer with us. Here in Sydney, Australia, outside one of their Apple stores. And again, all over the world at Apple stores, you're seeing the emotions that are being out. One of the more poignant graphics that we saw today was the iconic Apple logo with the shadow of Steve Jobs looking in, and that, of course, was circulating on Twitter as well. And then finally today, a blend of Steve's two passions that he had, one for film at Pixar, which he created in between his stints at Apple, and of course the famous Pixar lamp looking over a tombstone of Apple and Steve Jobs. So some of the images that we saw today across the social networks in remembrance of Steve Jobs.
At the outset, Aude Baron, I mentioned, again, these are inanimate objects. And yet, you should have seen in the newsroom earlier upstairs what it was like, the passionate arguing that was going on, that PC Mac world divide. What was it like in your newsroom?
Well, this morning was very interesting because, of course, everyone was, touched by the story. But you had on the one side the pro Steve Jobs, if we can say so, and on the other side, not the anti Steve Jobs, because what's interesting is to see that everyone agrees to say that Steve Jobs was great, and and he really created things. He invented a new manner of thinking, of living, a new way of working. But it was quite for some journalists it was weird to see all the positive reaction, and some said, okay, wait, maybe we should just stand back, just think about it a little bit, and Steve Jobs was maybe great, but maybe we shouldn't be not black or white. There was maybe we shouldn't point out also the darker side of the character, because we all know that he was great, he was fantastic, but he could also yell at people very strong, and he had when you ask to former employees, or for employees of Apple right now, they say that there's a double side of Steve Jobs. So
interesting. And he enjoyed, for the outside world in any case, rock star status, not just at product launches where the faithful would flock, but wherever he spoke, like at Stanford University in 2005.
Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Stay hungry, stay foolish. The Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak definitely remembers someone who could see the big picture.
The greatest, most memorable technology leader probably ever, but at least in our time. He's one of those in the category of Thomas Edison or Walt Disney that just, meant so much, bringing life to the world, actually. I'm going to miss the chance to go to him and just sit down and share, just person to person, how much fun we had in those days doing things together. But you lose it. You can't ever go back, and just have those conversations that make us both smile.
Dean Hovey, tell us about the first time you met Steve Jobs. We seem to have lost the connection with Santa Barbara. Hopefully we'll be able to fix that quickly. Jeff Jarvis in New York, what are people remembering today? Are they remembering the marketing genius, the technological innovator? Aude was alluding to his personal style. What's the biggest talking point where you are?
I think the point is that it's all of the above. It's hard to do too much hyperbole about Steve Jobs. For Public Parts, my book, I ended up doing a lot of research on Gutenberg as the creator of original tools of publicness, and he's very similar, actually. Both were incredible entrepreneurs, both solved very vexing technology problems, both were very secretive, both were perfectionists to the extreme, but more than anything else, both changed culture and society in huge ways. And I don't think we fully see the impact of Jobs. Yes, he changed technology by making it beautiful. He changed music, media, retail, all these things. But I think more than anything else, he gave us the means for anyone and everyone to create and share. And that, to me, is the basis of the society we're entering now. I think the change is every bit as big as Gutenberg's. Now, the combination of what Jobs did with, of course, the internet and other technologies, I think we see huge change in society. And that's what he gets credit for, is that the man believed in perfection, believed in giving people something special, control freak of control freaks. But what he really did was try to give us something awesome.
Philippe Ingrand, would you put Steve Jobs in the same category as Edison and Gutenberg?
Edison maybe, because both had a very aggressive usage of patents. I mean, this is a recent fact for Apple, but definitely, I mean, very strong protection of their own business against competitors by this. Gutenberg, no, I think I would put John von Neumann, the inventor of a computer, in a class even maybe superior to Gutenberg. Steve Jobs, I think, and Apple in general, played a very important role during maybe the first 20 years of the existence of Apple, when they provided a minority alternative to the architecture of the PC. And it was very important because you
had a monolith at the time.
There was a monolith.
Microsoft.
At the time, my own form of alternatives, free software and voluntary knowledge sharing, was so small that it was not on the radar of most people, and the existence of the Macs and the Apple in general were let's say they were leading people to problematize technology, to say, yeah, well, I like this one, or I do not like this one for this and this reason. And that's what Aude remarked is still there in the debates today, and I think it's very positive. Because I think the computers and all the related devices, they are technology of the mind. They really shape what you are. So you have to take a critical approach in both sense, liking it and wanting it to be something else.
And we spent so many hours in front of him. I think we now have Dean Hovey from Santa Barbara. Dean, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
All right. Tell us about the first time you met Steve Jobs.
Well, it was over 30 years ago, and I had just started a design firm, which is now called IDEO, and we were invited in to start working on the second computer that Apple created, which was the Apple III. Soon after we started that, we went on to design several other computers, including the Apple Mouse and the Macintosh and the Lisa. So he was quite an interesting character when we first met him. And what was fun is to see how he matured over time in his interactions with people and his interactions with devices.
So he was not the polished salesman that we know today.
No, he always had that quality of being a great salesman, and even maybe more importantly, a storyteller that connected with people. I think what I was thinking more about is his maturity around aesthetics and an appreciation for design. I suppose just like anybody else that might first start tasting wine and then over time get more sophisticated, he certainly has taken it to the nth degree. Again, maturity comes along with being so focused in a technology and an industry.
And we mentioned earlier about his rock star status. Did you have a sense that he would attain this global following?
You know, I guess I wasn't a very good predictor at the time, because when we were doing the mouse, I thought we might build somewhere between 100,000 and 500,000 of them over the time, and I missed that quite a while ago. So as a predictor of his rock star status, in the early stages, it was hard to see, but probably 5 even to 10 years into Apple, it was clear that this man was a different human being. And had so many great qualities to him.
Philippe Ingrand mentioning how his legacy evolved over time. You mentioned the mouse. Before we move on, I have to ask you this, Dean Hovey. At the time, Xerox, I believe, was also working on a similar concept. What did Steve Jobs see that a big company like Xerox didn't?
Well, as the story goes, he actually had a chance to tour Xerox PARC, which is where the many great inventions were actually conceived of. And I met with him a couple of days after that tour, and he said, "Dean, we need to create a mouse." So the mouse had already been created by Xerox, but at the time it was very expensive to make. It wasn't very reliable. And I remember the 3 design criteria that Steve had given me. He said, we need to make it for less than $15. It needs to last 2 years. And maybe this is the most insightful. I want to be able to use it on my Levi's. So he sort of rocked back in his chair, placed his hand on his leg, and sort of moved it around as if he was moving the mouse. And as I've reflected on that time, I realized that Steve always had this very personal relationship with technology. to the point of making it want to work with the person and wanting to touch it. And you, in a way, you see this happening now with the iPad, right? The intimate contact with the content and how you work with it is actually something that I think you wanted to do many years ago, but just couldn't as a result of the technology. But today you can.
Aude Baron, that's fascinating. The fact that it's tactile, you stroke it, it's got those curved edges. The design is so important.
That's why what's amazing with Steve Jobs is when you think about it, he didn't create any object. He just created a lifestyle because, as the guest explained it, almost every object he reinvented were already here, like the smartphone. They existed already before the iPhone. But Steve Jobs, he took an object which was not ugly, but just basic, and he wrapped it with a present, with a Christmas tree, with all the magic around it. And this object wasn't only, you didn't buy an object, you bought, when you buy an iPhone, you buy a world, you buy a lifestyle, you buy, all what's around, and actually there is a word for it. It's only marketing, and Steve Jobs was just a genius in marketing, and that's why all the people, they just want to use it.
Has the lover, Eric Hollander, of Apple products evolved over time? Is it those who defend Apple, are they the same today as they were 20 years ago, the way
No, it's a much broader audience than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was people like me who were kind of the geeks and who loved it. Here's the reason why we loved it. The wrapping is one part of it, and the design is absolutely an important part of it. But at the end of the day, Steve Jobs obsessed with the user experience. He obsessed that when you took out one of his products, it actually worked. When you opened up a Windows product and you get these bizarre error messages that don't make any sense, it takes me still to this day an hour to configure a Windows PC. It takes me 5 minutes to take an Apple out of the box and be on the internet. It takes nothing to get an iPad going. You take an Android device, some of the apps work and some of the apps don't work as well because they're not configured. This open standards, on the one sense, ideally sounds great, but on the other hand, a closed network of hardware and software united together allows to create an experience that's really unique, and that's what he was able to do.
Jeff Jarvis, very briefly before we go to the break, how have you felt his legacy evolving?
I agree that he's now kind of brought technology to every man and every woman, and the simplicity and the reliability are very important. There is a tension here between closed and open, and I think that he can get away with being closed just because he was so damn brilliant and his products were so good. But I don't think others can get away with that, nor should they try.
And we'll get to that point in the second part of our debate. Stay with us. You're watching France 24.